Thank you to TapTap for sponsoring this video. Snowbreak Containment Zone. I was lucky enough to be given early access to this game prior to its release, so I want to give you a quick rundown and tier list on every character. This won't necessarily be something I want you to define your gameplay by. One of the core aspects of this game that I do enjoy is that you are capable, since it's a third-person shooter, of utilizing cover effectively and positioning to determine what teammates are out in the open, where they're doing damage at, when they're doing damage, and when it's safe. You can, to a degree, mitigate the amount of damage you're taking in order to either survive longer or just complete the objective. Some of the boss fights I've done thus far, I've been able to hide behind destroyed cover or non-destroyed cover, at least not yet, in order to adequately evaluate the characters, or at least to deal damage from a distance. Now, this did significantly increase the amount of time the fight took, but it was more worthwhile if I didn't have a healer. So I want you to keep that in mind, that overall the value of these characters that I'm giving is based on my opinion. However, you can entirely have a different perspective depending on how you choose to play. If you're a bit more aggressive and less cover friendly and defensive, yeah, some of these healers may be more valuable to you. For quick reference, every character here is level 25. They are all the exact same level. They are all utilizing the original weapon they came with. I'm not utilizing anyone's 5-star variation of a damage dealing weapon because I just wanted to see how effective they are in their own roles. Nobody has any additional buffs or bonuses. They are all basically as is. As you can see here, I can activate these to see how they perform, but I don't believe many of you, especially for the 5 stars, will be getting them to their max level or their max manifestation, which is the equivalent to either C6 or Eidolon 6 in different other games. As such, every character here is evaluated from the perspective of a free-to-play player who just got one of these units and wants to know if they're worth building. The first operator I want to introduce is Yao. She is, at least as of right now, a free character. She's most likely going to be given when the game releases with the event, and I recommend building her no matter what. The reason is, regardless of whether you're aggressive or not, she's a healer. And not only is she a healer, but she allows you to swap effective teammates out for her. This means that once you use her burst, she actually sits back, you get a healing zone, and you can swap over to a more defensive or offensive character to either increase that survivability over time while your characters heal, or deal damage while you continue healing, as stated here. She's a pretty good one, and not to mention, because she's a sniper rifle, I want to clarify this first and foremost. The combat isn't ranged enough for snipers to be really valuable to the point where I'd say, please hunt them down. Instead, I want to clarify that because she's a sniper, she does have the ability to heal from a very far distance away from bosses or enemies. This also means that if a character is a sniper, you do have the advantage of range, obviously, but in the event that you're low on HP, you can attack from a long enough distance to where you aren't really at risk of dying. So Yao is first and foremost the S tier character I want everyone to build if you intend on playing this long term, especially if you're underleveled. Life, she's an individual who I actually recommend a lot of you summon for it. Now, the reason is she's utilizing a submachine gun, and as a result, she does have pretty decent range, but the primary ability I want you to focus on is her skills and her ultimate. These allow additional things to fire alongside her, and one of the most effective things I've noticed is that this is great for AoE situations where there are smaller mobs spread around, or for big bosses because you can focus on dodging while these continue to fire. I'd say that out of all of the 5-star roster, she's actually the one I would highly recommend you to either pull for, re-roll for, or whatever the case may be, just because she's so versatile. She's not excelling in dealing damage, she's not excelling in range, she's not excelling in defensive capabilities, but she's excellent for most content in the game, especially earlier on. As a 4-star operative, Life would also be considered S tier. Even Life's 4-star variation is pretty good because it is strong, it's just not the equivalent to a 5-star variation, it's just a weaker variation of her, to a point to where I'd say either the 5-star variation, the 4-star version, or both of them are worth building for your account because of the general viability. Now, those are the units I got the most value from, so they're considered S tier. It's Life's and obviously Yao, just because of the healing and versatility both of these units have. In regards to the A tier, I do want to clarify. Snipers have the issue in that the combat isn't ranged enough to warrant building them out unless you intend on hiding behind cover. And if you do intend on hiding behind cover, let's talk. General is the next character I'd recommend simply because her ultimate acts like a mini variation of Life's ultimate, in that it sends out another entity to consist and assist in attacking targets. Now, it does take her HP, don't get me wrong, so she does need a healer applied with her, but you're getting Yao for free. so keep that in mind. She's an individual who has enough range to warrant building her out, and if you like strafing or you just have enough cover, that ultimate can actually be pretty useful in clearing out stages, especially more difficult ones. I used it during a boss fight and had no issues whatsoever. Even though the boss jumped around a fair bit, the enemy or the thing she summons out is able to teleport around, so the range and movement of the boss isn't an issue. To add on to this, Marion's actually pretty good. I know I've mentioned earlier that snipers don't have a big place in the game, but I want to actually put emphasis on her smokescreen skill. This is pretty good for getting out of dangerous situations. If you need to heal and maybe your party is pretty low and you don't want to send out another character because you're afraid they may die, this is actually a pretty good get out of jail free card. I understand that getting a character or putting a character in A tier for that may be a little bit presumptuous, but I do believe that at the very least she's worth picking up and having on the team if you think you're a little bit underleveled or the boss fight may be particularly difficult, because if you can swap her in, use her smokescreen, run to somebody else like Yao to get that healing out, and then swap to a damage dealer, it may be pretty useful. Next, let's talk Fenny. She's an interesting character. Shotguns have the opposite problem that snipers do, in that in a lot of boss fights, you don't want to be super close to the boss. So the viability of a shotgun kind of depends up in normal play in the general use case scenario. Whether that's farming, whether that's actual mission stages, they're pretty good. But for boss stages, depending on the damage the boss deals and how your team comp is looking, you don't want to be up close and personal with them. But Fenny overall is a good one, strictly because she has AoE, she deals electro damage in addition to allowing her to continue dealing shotgun damage. Her ultimate also reduces the damage she's taking. Because this domain lasts for 10 seconds, she's dealing additional damage, she's interrupting enemy special skills, which can be pretty useful, and if you get these neuro skills, it unlocks additional bonuses like reducing damage taken. So overall, she's a good shotgun character. I just say your submachine guns, your assault rifles, or your sniper rifles should be your main priority. You don't want to get up close with enemies, especially as you venture into late game, particularly because if you're underleveled, you're not going to have a fun time. And if your entire team is based around the shotgun, you are not going to have a fun time. So I know I've only listed off a couple characters. Let's talk about the rest, because I understand many people may be interested in the rest. My main issue and main gripe with them is that because the game is so dependent on your own personal positioning, I can't recommend the 4-star variation of Fenny. The 4-star variation of Fenny is good like the 5-star variation, but I'm not going to put both in there, unless both excel at something like Life did. For the B and C tier, we're going to put pretty much everyone else. Haru is good, but her main limiting factor is her weapon. It's a pistol. I'm going to be honest here. Pistols don't deal enough damage and don't have enough shots in their magazine to make them worth using. Now, if you like her design, you can use her, but the problem is she doesn't have that much worth or that much over a submachine gun, a sniper, or an assault rifle. And yes, in the same vein, B and C tier characters as of right now are pretty much only going to be the pistol users because they provide effects and they have damage, but they don't have enough to make up for the weapon they're using. My only D tier character would be Nita. I understand she's a shotgun, and that can be pretty cool. Her biggest drawback though is her skill. Because this has a charging time and she actively needs to use it, she's going to be pretty vulnerable. And as a result of that, she doesn't have the range of any other weapon. So she's a close range character whose skill requires her to stand still for a couple seconds. And that couple seconds can be the difference between you completing a boss or you dying. Freya is pretty good. She has an assault rifle and she's, as of right now, is the only listed assault rifle character. However, the problem is her skill isn't wide enough in range that I would recommend pulling her over another character. So I'd say she's good, she's decent to use. She's just not amazing like A or S tier units, but she's not bad like Nita. A tentative B placement is Moxier. Now, the biggest thing I have with her is that she allows you to damage an opponent even if you can't reach them. This is because she can basically link something of her own creation to that opponent. This is iffy. If you're dealing with a machine gun or something of that range that can actually deal a lot of damage to you if you get caught in its line of sight, this is great. But for every other humanoid enemy or enemy that you can reach, this doesn't have that many uses. And for bosses, they have a big enough hitbox to where you can attack them. So I want to put her in B. And I know she can be really good like A or S tier-ish because she has something nobody else has. The problem is that depends entirely on where you're using her, and as such, there are so few case scenarios where she's viable or worthwhile to slot into your team that I can't place her any higher than this. My final rankings for S tier characters would be Yao and Life, both variations of her, simply for the versatility they offer and the ability to either keep your team alive or attack from multiple distances and areas. For every other unit on the roster, my recommendation is to please look at how you play the game first to determine if they're worth building. Don't get me wrong, a lot of them are incredibly powerful and can be useful in multiple ways, but I would advise against building up every single one on the roster or on the list. Instead, I would just say play around with their skills, play around with their ultimates, and find out which ways work best for you. With that all being said, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, leave a like down below, and check out the game. It will be linked down below in case you want to either take a look at the game itself and its official pages, or try pre-registration. Either way, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.